Welcome to You Need a Miracle with Jenna Raleigh Taylor. Be sure and get your copy of Jenna Raleigh Taylor's Signs and Wonders 101, 101 Days of Miracles, real life stories that build your faith. Buy it today on Amazon.com or on signsandwonders101.com.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of You Need a Miracle. I'm Jenna Taylor, and I have some great stories to tell you today. But before I begin, I feel like I have a real strong urging from the Lord to speak about an issue, and I'm going to talk about it first just because I feel like for him it's the most important thing that we're going to do today. And this is what I feel the Lord is saying. There are viewers today that have actually become estranged with their parents, or the father or the mother, the parent. It's a difficult situation. I feel like it's an adult child who is estranged from their parents, and I feel like the Lord wants to address it today. So years ago, my mother was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and she had to come here to Amarillo to figure out what to do for treatment. And when she did, they said it's terminal. There's nothing that can be done, and that was that. And so she said, okay, that I'm fine with that. I'm ready to go. But there's one more thing I want to do. Now, my mother is a force to be dealt with, believe me. But she said, there's one more thing that I want to do. I want you to buy a house here in Amarillo. I want you to put my furnishings in it. And I want... One last thing I want to do is I want to lie in bed in my husband's arms. So we're going to make that happen. And we were, okay, Mom. And so as it turned out, the house across the street had just gone on the market. And so Dad paid cash for it. Dad does what he's told. And so he paid cash for it. And then, of course, we remodeled, knocked out walls, recarpeted, repainted, picked out wallpaper. We did it all and had it all ready with her furnishings and her rugs and paintings and everything. And she got her wish. She got to sleep in her husband's arms for 3 weeks, and then she was gone. It was very sudden and difficult. It was a difficult time that he was sick, she was sick. Then he became I had to take care of my dad because he had Alzheimer's. And so we couldn't let him stay in the house anymore. He had to move here. It was quite a difficult time. It was a very difficult time. I love my father. He's a dear, dear man. But it was a lot of extra work with, medicines and doctor's appointments and laundry and all of this. And then when things seemed to be most difficult for me, my husband's mother died of cancer, and his father, who had Alzheimer's, had to move in with us as well. So now we have two men, old men, that keep running away. We have to chase them down the street, and the laundry and the who and the what and the things and the Alzheimer's, and it was exhausting. It was absolutely exhausting. But I knew this scripture, the commandment that says to honor your father and mother so it'll go well with you in the land and you'll live a long and prosperous life. And so I knew this was what my calling was to do at this time in my life, to take care of these two little old men that, served their country and everything, and they deserved that. But it was just very difficult and so hard. But I learned a trick that I think is so important, and that is that when you can honor your mother and dad, you will live a long and prosperous life, and it'll go well with you in the land. And so I encourage somebody's listening, and you're estranged with your parents or your father or your mother, and I feel like the Lord wants to set you free from the prison that you feel like you're in. And I could give you a guided tour around that experience, but I'm telling you to be faithful to it for your own sake. And I that's what I did. I did it faithfully for my own sake. And I feel like God wanted to talk about that this is important to honor your mother and father. And even when they're, difficult, and I know sometimes they can be unknowingly difficult. So that's the paid political announcement today. Last week we were talking about opening the kingdom and how is it that you can open the kingdom and why do we want to get into the kingdom of heaven? Well, the fact is everything that we need, every healing that we need, it's all in the kingdom of heaven. So the question is, if that's where all the blessings are and all the promises are and all the miracles are, then how do you get into that kingdom? It's like a parallel universe that we've talked about. And, what is this kingdom? And where is this kingdom? And how do you get into the kingdom? And I have learned over the years, I've studied this for years and years and years, and I've learned that right now I've discovered 33 ways to actually step into the kingdom that will open the door to the kingdom. And so I want to talk about some of those. Last week we talked about 5 particular specific ways that I've discovered to get into the kingdom. The first is to practice presence. Now, what do I mean? Practicing presence is when you have that quiet time every day. You get up in the morning, it's the first thing you do. I personally get the coffee first and then go in, but at any rate, it's a habit of being with the Lord and having this quiet time with the Lord. Whether I have a girlfriend and she had to do her quiet time at 10 o'clock at night. She had 4 children and they were small children. It was not going to happen in the morning. And so, but it is practicing presence with the Lord and having that relationship with Him. Another way is when Jesus said, "Blessed are the poor in spirit." And so I thought, what does that mean, poor in spirit? And how are you blessed if you are poor in spirit? The truth is that this is what I believe. I believe that many, if not all, children suffer at the hands of someone else, whether that be the parent or there's trauma, a childhood trauma. We'll put it that way. And so it creates in us a poor in spirit that we carry. And so you're thinking, well, how can that be a blessing? Well, actually, it is a blessing because you are aware of the presence of the Lord and having that relationship with Him through the difficulties that you've gone in. The other one that we talked about last week was our teleos. And I love this word because in the Greek, what this means is to arrive at the intended purpose of your life. And having done that, that is your getting into the kingdom or entering the kingdom because you're walking out God's will for your life and the plan for your life in everything that you do. And so, an example is, who knew? I'm a portrait painter, and I paint portraits for wealthy clients. And so my goal, I felt like my calling in my life was to minister to these wealthy young mothers who didn't have anybody to talk to. They had to talk the talk and walk the walk. And so there were many, many times that I did get to do that, pray with a mother, lead one to the Lord, and just have this temporary type relationship. And so one day I was in my studio working, and I had a tape on that, and it's a ministry. It's an older gentleman, and it's a ministry, and he's just a dear old saint. And I always got a monthly tape from him. And this particular month, this was not him on the tape. It was some crazy woman, crazy, and not making any sense until she started talking about being this missionary to Mozambique and how she had seen blind eyes open and the lame walk and all the miracles in the Bible she got to see. And she participated in all of these incredible stories. And I was dumbfounded. It's in a nanosecond, God changed my entire life. And I said, I'll go anywhere and I'll do anything, but I want to do what she's doing. And the first words out of his mouth, clear as the audible voice of God, said, "Go to Faith City Mission." I thought, I don't know what Faith City Mission is. I mean, I didn't know what it was, and I didn't know, anything about it. But I said, okay, I'll go. And so, sure enough, I went, and it's a homeless shelter, and it's the homeless shelter that feeds the poor and feeds the homeless and the poor, and houses men and women and children. And it's an important thing for the safety of this people group in our city that we're here to do this. And so, we're so very glad. Now, it rocked on for a while, and then it looked like some naughtiness had happened. There was some legal problems that went on with it, and I was on the board. I was the president of the board at the time, and things weren't adding up, and the finances, this is not good. And sure enough, there was some criminal work done, and we had to take back over the mission. We were going to lose it. In fact, we were about to lose it. And we thought, we're going to close the doors. What are we going to do? And this is our calling on our life. And here we're supposed to help the poor and feed the homeless, and we can't pay the electric bill. And so as a board, we worked together as hard as we could in order to do this right by the Lord. And this is, that thing that happens with your intended purpose in your life. And sure enough, thank God we were able to save the mission, keep the doors open, feed, clothe, house. In fact, being able to implement these things that we didn't know we needed to do, actually, at the time that this former director was there, the annual budget, this is public knowledge anyway, but the annual budget at Faith City Mission was $700,000. Today, with the board of directors and parameters put into place and honoring God in every way we can, our budget is over $2.2 million annually. And we just feel like God blessed those that tried to save the little ones. And I think that's that, incredible intended, it's the intended purpose of your life. And I believe that was mine. The other one we talked about was the wrecking ball. And that's when you don't smoke, you don't chew, you don't go with the girls that do, you're doing your thing and doing it right. And all of a sudden you just get wrecked, which is what happened to me on my studio floor when God said, go work with the homeless shelter. I thought, okay, I don't know. It's just, we call it the wrecking ball. It's when your entire process is changed overnight. And then there's also the testimony, which is the court of law. That means the courts of heaven have a court of law. And when I want to go before the Lord and cite my case, I can actually use a testimony from a previous time, whether it's in the Bible or somewhere else, where I can cite that testimony in the court of law of heaven to get to that place about my prayers answered. And so, but we want to go on because that was the first 5, and now we have 5 more ways that we can actually get into the kingdom and get what we need. And so the one that is probably the most important and the hardest maybe would be charity. And when I say charity, I'm talking about the tithe and offerings. And so the 10% is the minimum. And of course, Malachi 3:8 says these words. I think they're profound. And it says these words, "Will a man rob God? Yet you are robbing me. But you say, how have we robbed thee? In the tithes and the offerings. You are cursed with a curse, for you are robbing me, the whole nation. Bring the whole tithe into the storehouse, so that there may be food in my house, and test me." This is the one place that you can test the Lord. He invites you to test him. And I've tested him on this, and it's true. Test me and see if I will not open for you the windows of heaven and pour out for you a blessing until it overflows. Then I will rebuke the devourer for your sake, so that it may not destroy the fruits of the ground, nor will your vine within the field cast its grapes, says the Lord of hosts. and all the nations will call you blessed, for you shall be a delightful land, says the Lord of hosts. So that is one of the ways to get into the kingdom, to actually have this charity and to walk in charity. And I'll give you an example of this. We, as I said, we actually tithe all our income, everything that comes in with donors, we tithe that back to the Lord. And we've even had donors that would say, why are you putting 10%? Why are you tithing? I don't understand. I wanted this for you. And once we explained the power of the tithe, the promises in the tithe, they were fine with it. They were great with it. And so, it was just, it's so important to be a part of that charity. And it is absolutely important to you. Another one, pardon me, is what I call desperation. And Psalm 34:6, I'd like just to read that. I have so many. It says these words, I sought the Lord, and he answered me and delivered me from all my fears. They looked to him and were radiant, and the faces shall never be ashamed. This poor man cried to the Lord, and the Lord heard him and saved him out of all his troubles. The angel of the Lord encamps around those who fear him and rescue them. O taste and see that the Lord is good. How blessed is the man who takes refuge in him. And so, there's a certain desperation that happens. And I'll give you another example, and you know the story, but it's a remarkable story. And it's the case of one of the cities of Israel being besieged by the Arameans. And so the city's shut up. It's locked up for protection. And they're running out of food. They have no food. And this is a real problem. Well, sitting outside, so they're inside the walls. Sitting just outside the walls by the gate are 4 lepers who aren't allowed in the city. So it's kind of being between the devil and the deep blue sea. Here's the besieged city. Here are these poor lepers, and here is the encampment of the Arameans. And so there's no hope here. It's a done deal, and it's a lost cause. And finally, as the lepers said, we have nothing to lose. We're either going to die here, or we might be able to die in the Aramean camp, or be prisoners, and then we can get fed. So they decided, okay, we're going to do this. We're going to get up and do something different. That's a word for somebody that's listening. It's time to get up and do something different, because what's working is not working anymore. At any rate, they went to the camp. Well, it was abandoned. There was nobody there at the camp. The Arameans were gone. And they thought, what in the world? All the food was there. They ate, feasted, and had wine. It was a great time. And then they decided, we probably ought to go tell the city. There's plenty of food here, and share it with them. And so they actually did. They went and told the city, the Arameans are not here. Plenty of food and water. Come join us. And they stampeded out and went and enjoyed this incredible thing. And here was what happened. They were freed because of 4 lepers, which is just incredible. Now, why did the Arameans leave their encampment? Evidently, the Lord actually created the sound of many horses running and hoops and hollers, and they thought they were under siege. And so they ran. And I think it's an incredible story. The Lord is so good. There's a story, that desperation story. There's a story of a gentleman that was a regular there at the mission, and his name was Dane, and he was Danish, and he had beautiful long blonde hair. It was absolutely beautiful. And he came up to me one day, and he said, Mrs. Taylor, I need you to pray for me because I think I got a job, and it's in a warehouse, and it's heavy lifting, and I just tore my rotator cuff. And I can't lift, and I'm desperate for this job. And I looked at him because at that very moment, I actually had on a brace from having had rotator cuff surgery. And I said, do you see the problem here? I don't think I'm your girl. And he goes, no, it is. You are. You're supposed to pray for me. And so I said, okay. So, I prayed for him and for his rotator cuff, and that God would heal it, and that he would be able to lift and so forth and so on. And so off he went. He came back the next day at 5:00, and I said, well, how'd it go? And he said, oh my gosh. He said, I worked from 8 in the morning till 5 in the afternoon, and I didn't hurt one time. We healed me. I said, well, I didn't heal you. The Lord healed you. And he said, well, I did. He said, I even jumped up and did push-ups to see if I could do push-ups, and I could. So I worked all day, and it was great, and thanks for the prayer, and I appreciate it. And so, it's just, he was desperate to get a job. God honored that, and that was amazing. There's another story of a young man who was desperate, and he had actually come to us, and he spoke Spanish only, but I had a translator. And what had happened was he was an alcoholic, and he had destroyed his body, had that big bulge, that big belly that they get, the cirrhosis of the liver, late-stage cirrhosis of the liver. And he destroyed his body, and he wanted prayer. And he'd heard that someone else had gotten prayer, and they were also healed. And so, at any rate, we did. We laid hands on him and prayed for him during a morning chapel, and he left. And so, the next week, I'm just talking to, the homeless at the lunch crowd, and I'm telling this story, about Arosando, and I didn't know what had happened or anything. And so the security guard at the very back of the room said, you didn't even recognize him, did you? And I said, what? And he said, Arosando, you prayed for him last week. He's completely healed. And he said, stand up, Arosando. And he did, and his belly was gone. The cirrhosis was gone. His belly was gone. His coloring was back. He was completely healed that day, and a different man. It is crazy. It was crazy. But he was desperate, and he came to get healed. There's another way that works in the kingdom, and that's the power of the seed. So if you go to Matthew 17:20. Oh, I didn't get that one. So I'll tell you about the seed and the sower. That when you sow the seed, some falls on rocky ground, some in the bushes, it falls away. And but there is the seed that people keep that actually does germinate and creates your miracle that you need. And so this is the story. There was a girl that came to the mission. She actually worked the program. And then she came on staff as the program. The sad part was that she, because of her past, she had been diagnosed with stage 3 kidney cancer and intestinal cancer and stage 4 colon cancer. And they gave her absolutely no hope. So she's on staff, and there's no hope, and there's nothing that can be done. And so of course, what we did is in our little chapel service on Wednesday morning, which is where we see most of the healings, we prayed for her. We laid hands on her, and we prayed for her. And then a couple of weeks later, she had another appointment with her doctor, and the doctor was absolutely mystified because she was doing so well, ran the tests, and no tumor markers, and she was completely healed of all that cancer. And it was amazing. She's now on staff and works in the accounting office. And so, but here's what I had said to her when we were praying for her. Keep your seed of faith. Don't throw your seed away because you don't see something happen. Keep your seed right there, the seed in the sower. Don't throw your seed away. Important thing to do. There is another one that we call the decree. And so in the decree, that means that you simply make this statement, this decree, and then you go from there. And so I'll give you an example. As you know, I became ill. And in my illness, we didn't know what it was, but I looked like an emaciated Holocaust victim. I had lost so much weight. They couldn't figure out what was wrong. They continued to run tests, and it just went on and on and on. And finally, they sent me to get an endoscopy. And so when I went to the endoscopy, it was Dr. Miller in Lubbock, and he said, you have a tumor on your pancreas the size of a large lemon. It's crushing your bile duct, so you're going to have surgery. You're going to have to go to MD Anderson. Well, I was devastated, and I absolutely thought, you know, one of the things that we talk about is that if we keep the word, like honoring your mother and father, so it'll go well with you in the land and you'll live a long and prosperous life, that type of thing, you know, that these things wouldn't happen. But he did say you're going to have to go to MD Anderson and they're going to have to do surgery. And so I tell you, that was a long period, because I was in the hospital here. And even when I was in the hospital here and we got the diagnosis, and my poor husband, his wife was also in the cancer ward of that hospital. She had cancer, and she passed away from cancer. And he was a widower with 3 kids and didn't know, come from Sikkim. And it was, you know, you feel like you're facing this horrible, horrible situation, and there's no hope in it. And yet God, and I'll say it again, but God, because he is faithful of his faithfulness, it's just amazing. Well, at any rate, you know, Dr. Miller said he would pray for me, and we ended up at MD Anderson. And when we got there, you know, we did the surgery, and the next day the doctor walked in the room with the piece of paper, and he said, I cannot believe this, but this tumor's benign. You have no cancer. And oh my gosh, we were shocked. He was shocked. Nobody was more shocked than he was, because it was so big. And he just said, that's amazing. That's amazing. And so, you know, as time went by, the recovery's horrible. I'll just tell you that. I was there for 3 weeks. And I actually, when they move everything, they take the pancreas, they took half the stomach, they took everything. They removed blood vessels. It's a very, very complicated surgery. And so you're on the special floor where they watch you day and night. And at any rate, they had to take me back to surgery. I sprung a leak with a blood vessel. They had to take me back to surgery. It was terrible. I didn't want to do it again, and but I had to. And they put me back in the room again and said, don't get up unless you call for help. So one night, I got up. I didn't get up. I called for help. And 2 of the biggest nurses I have ever seen, Jonathan and Ellis, came into the room. They would look like linebackers. And I said, this little chair by the bed, I said, I need to use that. And he said, okay. And he took me, and he just went tink, like I was a rag doll. And so I'm there, and all of a sudden I said, Ellis, I think I'm going to faint. I think I'm going to faint. And he said, just a minute. And he turned away, and boom, down I went. No pulse, no breath, fixed stare. Died on the floor. He grabbed me. He started doing CPR on me and pushing it and doing this thing. And of course, the story is I did get to go to heaven or paradise, and it was amazing for a while. And then I woke up, and there was Ellis, and I was on the floor, and he was doing 8, 9, 10, which is very surreal, actually. But the truth is this, because of the nature of God, and I believe it had a lot to do with my mother and father, that I cared for them and was kind to them and took care of everything that I lived. And I reminded the Lord, you said honor your mother and father, and so it'll go well with you in the land, and you'll live a long and prosperous life. And I believe that gift was given to me that day. Just an amazing story, incredible. And I hope that this encourages you for your miracle, and I'll be praying for you as well. God bless you. Amen.
Be sure and get your copy of Jenna Raleigh Taylor's Signs and Wonders 101, 101 Days of Miracles, real-life stories that build your faith. Buy it today on Amazon.com or on signsandwonders101.com.